All right, we're going to tackle a question today that's, well, it's a little uncomfortable. Why is it that most of us are completely convinced that we're more ethical than the average person? And what happens when that belief gets put to the ultimate test? Let's dive in.
So, let's just start with a really honest question. I want you to think about the people in your life, your coworkers, your friends, your family. Compared to all of them, how ethical are you, really?
Okay, let's actually put a number on it. Imagine a scale, 0 to 100. 50 is perfectly, totally average. 100 is, basically a saint. Where do you think you land on that scale? Just think of a number.
So, what did you pick? I'm going to bet it was probably above 50. If so, you are not alone. When researchers ask people this exact question, the average response isn't 50, which, mathematically it has to be. Nope. The average answer is 75. We almost all believe we're significantly better than average, which of course is completely impossible.
This whole thing, this idea that we're all secretly moral superstars, it actually has a name. We're about to explore the psychology behind what researchers call the holier-than-thou effect. It's a huge blind spot that pretty much all of us have.
At its core, it's all based on this really well-known cognitive bias called the better-than-average effect. It's just a natural quirk of the human brain to assume that we're a little smarter, a little kinder, and a little more skilled than everyone else around us.
And when you take that general bias and you apply it specifically to our sense of right and wrong, that's when it gets that special, very memorable name, the holier-than-thou phenomenon. We just see ourselves as more virtuous. The writer Dave Barry just nailed this perfectly. He said deep down inside, we all believe that we are above average drivers. It's the exact same idea, right? It's so hard for us to imagine that when it comes to something like ethics, we might just be average.
So who cares? Is this just a harmless little ego boost? Or is there a real measurable gap between the person we think we are and the person we actually are when things get tough? Well, let's see what the data says. Okay, first up, a simple scenario. Imagine someone asks you if you'd be willing to buy a daffodil to support a cancer charity. Seems like a no-brainer, right? An easy, moral thing to do. What percentage of people do you think would say, yes, of course?
Well, in the actual study, a whopping 83% of people predicted that they would buy one. But when a different group of people was actually put in that situation, only 43% did. Just look at that difference. Our idea of our own generosity was nearly double the reality.
Now let's raise the stakes a lot. You've probably heard of the famous Milgram experiment. It was designed to test how far people would go in obeying an authority figure. Participants were told by a scientist to deliver what they believed were real, painful electric shocks to another person. So the question is, would you do it?
Almost everybody who hears about this experiment says the same thing. No way. I would have stopped immediately. But the results? They're just staggering. In the original study, 65% of people, that's 2 out of every 3, went all the way to the maximum voltage. They followed orders even when they thought they were causing someone extreme pain.
But here is the most important and honestly the scariest part. Even when you tell people these results, it doesn't change what they think they would do. You can tell them that 2/3 of people obey, and they'll still say, "Yeah, but that wouldn't be me. I would be different." We are absolutely convinced we're the exception to the rule. So, is this blind spot just part of being human? Is it universal? Well, this is where the research takes a really fascinating turn. Because the answer is no, it's not. It turns out that culture plays a massive role in how well we actually see ourselves.
So we can kind of look at 2 broad cultural mindsets here. On one hand, you have individualist cultures, like in the US or Western Europe, where the goal is often to be unique, to stand out, to have high self-esteem. And on the other hand, you have collectivist cultures, more common in East Asia, where the focus is on group harmony, fitting in, and self-improvement.
And this difference changes everything. Just look at this table. In individualist cultures, people are consistently inaccurate at predicting their own behavior. They always overestimate how moral they'll be. But in collectivist cultures, they're largely accurate. They have a much clearer picture of themselves. And what's wild is that both groups are pretty good at predicting how other people will act. The blind spot is really just about ourselves.
So what's going on? Well, it seems that in collectivist cultures, the main social goal isn't to prove you're better than everyone else. It's to maintain harmony and fit in with the group. And that fundamental difference seems to lead to a much more realistic, less inflated view of yourself.
Okay, So we've seen the bias, we've looked at the pretty shocking data, we've even seen how culture shapes it. Let's bring this all home. What does this mean for you right now, and why on earth does any of this matter?
The biggest danger here isn't that we are secretly terrible people just waiting to do bad things. That's not it at all. The danger is that we're overconfident in our own goodness. And that overconfidence makes us vulnerable. It leaves us completely unprepared for real situations where social pressures can make good people do things they really, really regret.
So how do we fight this? Well, it really starts with a dose of humility, just admitting that social pressure is incredibly powerful. From there, we can try to get better at spotting and maybe even avoiding those high-pressure situations. It also helps to get curious about your own motives, to ask yourself, why am I really doing this? And finally, just having a plan, thinking ahead about how you'll respond in a tough spot can make all the difference.
Look, the goal of all of this isn't to feel guilty or bad about yourself. It's to be wiser. Understanding that we all have this vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's actually the very first step toward building real moral courage. So I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you know these blind spots exist in all of us, how will you choose to see yourself differently?